Good morning. My name is Mary Scharf, and I am the 33rd District PTA Director of Budget and Finance. Welcome to our budget workshop. We have a few housekeeping notes about this Zoom meeting before we get started. We ask that all participants please mute yourself during the presentations. Please ask questions in the chat section, and the panelists will review the questions and answer the questions as we go along. And we will be sharing video segments covering the PowerPoint that we shared with you. After each video segment, we will have some polls and other activities, and we will answer as many of the submitted questions as possible. On our training team today is Lisa Uematsu, the 33rd District PTA Treasurer, Emmy Morimoto, the 33rd District Financial Secretary, Flora Fazard, the 33rd District Tax and Government Filing Consultant, Rita Rivera, the 33rd District Incoming Financial Secretary, and Margaret Liu, the 33rd District PTA Incoming Financial Reviewer. So what is a budget? So the California State PTA Toolkit says the budget is a financial representation of the goals, activities, and operations of a PTA expects to conduct during a specific time period. So now we will have the video that covers slides 4 and 5.
Here are elements that your budget should include: the name of your PTA, the time period of the budget. So the budget coincides with the term of office, which is also the association's fiscal year. So for next year, the beginning date would be July 1, and the ending date would be June 30. Also include the beginning balance, which is the starting balance at the beginning of the next PTA fiscal year. Whatever the ending balance is on June 30 will be your starting balance on July 1. For the income section, this is your projected income. Income from past budgets can be reviewed, and you can determine your best estimates for the coming year. Also include a separate line for income not belonging to the unit. This includes the portion of your membership dues, which is forwarded to your council. This amount varies from council to council, so be sure to check your bylaws, and we'll discuss this in a little bit more detail on the next slide. Include all your anticipated expenses. So similar to the income section, the expenses are your projected expenses, and past budget expenses can be reviewed to determine your best estimates. Expenses not belonging to the unit, we'll discuss this in more detail on the next slide as well, but this includes the portion of your membership dues that you forward to your council. The ending balance is what you end up with after adding your beginning balance and all the income, then subtracting all expenses. For the ending balance, there's no set number to leave here, but at the very least, it's recommended that there's enough funds to carry over to the next year to pay for items until your main fundraiser kicks off. These items can include certain bills, organizational expenses like your PTA insurance, or if you have one, a website, and programs such as welcome back events. And in terms of your main fundraiser, if, for example, you're a high school PTA that runs snack bar at football games, you'll need startup money and money to purchase inventory. Also be sure to include the date that the budget was approved by the board and the association. On this next slide is a sample budget. At the top is the PTA's name, Awesome Elementary PTA. The budget is titled Proposed Budget because it'll need to be approved by the board and association. So until then, it's called the Proposed Budget. This first line is titled Carry Forward Balance. As mentioned previously, this is the ending balance of the previous year. So if you're working on next year's budget, this is the amount you end up with on June 30. And since it's not June 30th yet, insert the amount that you anticipate ending up with. In the income section, note that membership dues is listed on 2 lines. One is noted as membership dues income unit portion only, and the other total membership dues income. Membership dues income unit portion only. This is where to record membership dues received by cash, check, or your own unit website, for example, My PT Easy. It should reflect only the portion kept by your unit. As an example, if your membership dues are $10 and $4 remains with your unit, that $4 is called the unit portion and goes here. And the $6, which is forwarded to your council, is called the non-unit portion. So for every $4 recorded here, $6 is recorded into the non-unit income line here. One quick and easy way to check if you're doing the allocation correctly is that the number of members in the membership dues income line should match the number of members in the non-unit dues section. And using the previous example where dues cost $10, you'll notice that there's $500 here in the membership dues income unit portion line. So if $4 of the $10 remains with your unit, then the $500 here represents $500 divided by $4, which equals 125. So 125 members. So we would expect then that 125 members would also be in the membership non-unit dues line here. So 125 times $6, the amount which is forwarded to your council, equals $750. So we would expect to see $750 here. Please remember, though, that the amount that you forward varies from council to council, and this is just an example. Many units also use Totem, which is an online way to join PTA. And when members sign up through Totem, Totem transfers the unit portion to your bank account. And you don't need to worry about the portion of your dues that you should forward to your council because Totem takes care of that. It's recommended to use different budget line items for different sources of membership income, so it's easy to keep track of. Other items in the income section represent projected income from programs, fundraisers, and donations. For fundraisers in particular, fundraising income is the gross income from fundraisers. So you'll need to list each fundraiser individually. The expense for conducting each fundraiser should be listed under expenses individually by fundraiser. In this particular example, $7,500 is projected for the fall fundraiser income. And looking at the expense section, it also has a fundraiser line. There's your fall fundraiser expense, and you'll note that there's an anticipated expense of $3,750. So going back up to donations here, be sure to have a separate income line to record donations that come in with memberships. The total projected income at the bottom here is all of your anticipated income, which totals $19,530. In the expense section, expenses are broken down into program services, special fundraising expenses, organizational expenses, and expenses not belonging to unit. For program services, this could include items such as spiritware, reflections, and honorary service awards. For fundraising, here's where each fundraiser is listed individually. For non-unit or expenses not belonging to unit, similar to the income section, there should be a separate line for non-unit expenses. This includes membership non-unit dues. This is a portion of dues received by your unit that you pay to your council. Be sure to keep an eye on the non-unit dues in the income section and the non-unit dues in the expense section down here, because ultimately these two should be the same. Whatever you take in that needs to be forwarded to your council should equal what you actually forwarded to your council. Founders Day, all money received for Founders Day should be forwarded to your council as well. The projected cash balance on June 30 is the carry forward balance from the very top. And in this case, $4,250 plus all of your income minus all of your expenses, which in this example ends up as $5,530. And at the bottom, indicate the date that the proposed budget was approved by the board and association.
All righty. So we do have a few questions in the chat. Sunny's asking if we have any Excel or Google Sheets that can be used as a sample. Then again, anyone who's interested in something like that, go ahead and email us afterwards because we do have sample ones that we used for this, in fact. So that'll help. That would be fine.
Yeah, I did want to mention about the new unit budget you're right. I did write to consult the council, but also your budget doesn't have to be perfect if you don't have the knowledge at the time. So you're preparing your budget based upon known plans that you have or anticipating, but you can always update your budget, which is a plan, when new things are known. So.
Okay, so are there any other questions for right now?
Yes. So I know you guys started talking about the budget sample. So I didn't even know that there was a proposed budget that has to be presented in the beginning of the school year. Excuse me. So we propose the budget and then it gets approved, and then as the months go by, we're supposed to update our expenses. Is that what we're supposed to be doing?
There are slides. We're going to talk about the approving the budget process before year end in order to make summer payments. And so I'm going to cover, or that slide covers the exact process of getting the budget from the budget committee, from the board elect to the current board, and then the association prior to June. So there is a slide out there that we're going to explain that entire process of how to get your budget approved for this year.
Okay, and so someone's asking about what email if they have questions afterwards, and our contact information is on the second slide of the handout that we sent out. And then just to let you know that this video is being recorded and will be available later if you need to review it again. Okay. Courtney asks, anything that is already approved in the budget before the year starts does not need to be revoted on and approved, correct? So Flora, I guess that means, oh, if we present
Okay,
it.
well, I think we're going back to the slide that we're going to have, but
That's true.
maybe we need to do that slide
Okay.
4, because that explains the summer payments, how you get your budget approved now to make those payments, and you get it approved in the fall. So hopefully
Okay.
that slide.
Well, yes, so we'll be covering that.
Yeah,
so-
yeah.
Okay. How do we record a multi-year asset? Like a 3-year subscription to Planet Bravo. We pay them a lot 1 year, then nothing for 2 years. But can we fundraise over the 3 years, not just before the 1 year we have to pay for the 3-year subscription? Okay, this one seems very, very specific. So we'll actually be taking questions after the end of this workshop. So Elena, if you're able to stick around afterwards, and then we might be able to address that in more detail then. If there are no other questions, we're going to do this exercise, which may actually kind of help. What's wrong with this budget? So then that'll give us time to go over each of the elements. And then if you have questions, then you can bring them up at that point. All righty. So here's a sample budget. There are some things that are missing or some things that are wrong with it. Just to let you know, it's not math issues, so don't be whipping out your calculators. But if you see something that's incorrect or that you have questions on, go ahead and drop that into the chat. Oh, look at that. Katie Adamson has gotten that. There's not a year at the top, right? So there's nothing that says what year it belongs to. Who knows if it's next year, this year, 10 years ago. Whoa, okay, people are doing a good job here, okay. It doesn't show funds not belonging to the unit, that's correct. Okay. Not written as a proposed budget, right? membership dues does not subtract out what's forwarded to the council. That's correct.
Oh, okay. I can say the fall fundraisers does not, you should not be recording net income. You should be recording the gross income for the fundraiser and then the expense and the expense side, the fundraiser expense, but you would never post the net proceeds as income.
The membership dues, here it's got the whole amount of membership income and not just the portion that belongs to the unit. That income needs to be separated out. Okay. Not approved by the association. That's a good point. In fact, it is actually missing spots for the board approval and the association approval.
And totem fees, yes, quite right, Sunny, that they should be under expenses. So when you get your totem reports, you'll report the donation amount that they collect as gross in the income, and then the fee as an expense.
Sunny notes that the teacher appreciation amount is over 5% of the total budgets. That's something that you want to be careful of because hospitality, it needs to be restricted. And I think we talk about this a little bit at the end, but you want to make sure that events like teacher appreciation don't get out of hand because generally if it's a lunch that you're having for all the teachers or the staff, that's considered hospitality. And then that would, that per IRS guidelines, it needs to be not an insubstantial amount, which they don't really stick a number on that. But in the past, we've kind of gone along with 5% as a rule of thumb.
Should we talk about the associated student body?
Let's
I'm
do
sorry,
that.
going back to the teacher appreciation, it shouldn't be 5% of what amount of the balance and at the end of the month balance?
Your operating budget, expense budget.
So your total
So-
projected expenses.
Yeah, 5% of that.
Okay, go ahead, Flora, with the.
Okay, we see under income associated student body fundraiser 300 and associated student body donation 300. That is commingling funds because it's apparent that the PTA is collecting funds and giving it to the associated student body. We're not allowed to collect funds that is not collected as a result of our tax exempt status or requirements. The associated student body has a different tax exempt status or requirements. And so we are not allowed to collect money for another entity or organization. It is not pass-through. The pass-through income for PTA is fine because we're one organization. And so when the principal asks, can you collect money for yo-yos and give us the money afterwards, the answer would be no. We cannot do that because we can only deposit money into our PTA bank account that we have control over. And there was a situation where a unit collected money for the school. It put them over the $50,000 revenue, and they had to pay $1,000 over 2 years to get their taxes prepared. So there's other implications also. So never collect money on behalf of any other organization and then give it to them. It's money laundering. Okay.
And then Anna mentions that the membership expense is in the wrong spot because it's being, the amount forwarded to council is being treated as just an expense as opposed to an expense not belonging to the unit. And I don't know if anyone caught this, that there's, in addition to the missing budget year at the top, it's good to have also for the carried forward balance and the projected ending balance to have dates on there. So it's really clear what period is being covered. Christine is asking for individuals who have never done a budget before, how would they know what's missing? So, Flora, do you want to?
Okay, well, like we said, a budget, your initial budget, it's not perfect. It's a plan. It's not a financial transaction. And all of us who've been around forever, we look at our budget once a month, we revise it, we reallocate. And so your initial budget does not have to be perfect, but it's what you know at the time. And so if you know, okay, we're going to have a fundraiser and let's estimate the amount. And then you want to put in your expenses, insurance, you're going to pay insurance. So anything that is known or you can project, you can put in there, knowing that you can update it anytime through the approval process by the board and an association with things that are known.
I'm checking with Rita. Are you able to see the chat yet, Rita? Can you start
Yes.
with can you see Jennifer's question about another organization? Or
Pass through?
yeah.
Okay, so, can you explain the rules for pass through again?
Oh, sorry. Actually,
Oh, sorry, what?
let's read the whole question. Does that
Oh.
only apply if it is another organization? Are
Yes.
we permitted to collect funds from performing arts ticket sales if the money will go back into that program as a pass-through?
You collect money as a result of a PTA approved activity or program. So the performing arts sounds like that's a program that's being put on by the performing arts, if I'm seeing this correctly. So you can only use PTA accounts in which money is put into the account and the PTA has complete control over that money. Does that make sense? And we have the pass-through accounts only for memberships because we're one organization and we have the same tax exempt status. The Performing Arts Center tax exempt status or requirements to collect money is different from ours. It could be, dancing, arts, whatever. So this is the reason why the IRS gives us our tax exempt purpose, and we cannot collect money that does not go with that tax exempt purpose.
I do not see convention on here. Is there a recommendation or a max for leadership training?
No, I don't know of any cap on training. It's whatever the association of the board recommends and the association approves. The food part of it, I think, what is an IRS stipulation? It's 5%. It's not to say the IRS is going to come and raid your teacher appreciation lunch, but it's a guideline, that we should adhere to. They don't want to make it like PTA is just one big food fest party, so there is a guide, they call it a guideline, an IRS guideline. So we try to keep close to that, but if you go a bit over it or whatever, it's not fatal.
Okay, next, Diana is asking who can make changes to the budget?
Well, you should, like we said, revise and take a look at the budget at least once a month, but quarterly is normal, but it should be when known. And revisions should be made when they're needed and there's reallocation or whatever. And it's usually discussed in the board. It should be discussed at the board meetings first because they can look at the line items, assess, what the financial position is, how much money we have, and then they would make board recommendations to the association. And the association would approve, hopefully, those board recommendations. By two-thirds vote, I think.
Yes. Okay, I'm going to jump in with Courtney's question here about the guidelines about 5% teacher appreciation. Is there somewhere a list of guidelines of what should be included where and any limits for amounts? We do discuss limits a little bit later toward the end of this presentation. And then if you want to unmute yourself and clarify what you mean by a list of guidelines of what should be included where, does that mean like what should be included under organization or under special events?
Yeah, sure. So just a list of guidelines of things that, I don't even know what sort of expenses there should be, so I don't know what to put where.
If you're able to stick around after the training, then we can touch base and see whether we need to send you some resources or maybe do a Zoom call with you. Okay.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much.
Sure. Okay. Rita, go ahead with Katie's question.
Okay, as the treasurer of a unit, am I supposed to update our budget document monthly? So there is an budget that reflects our unit's finances monthly.
Okay, you may review the budget to actual is what we call it. It's the budget and then what's happening. And then you can do that monthly. It should be done at least quarterly. But if the treasurer and the finance team can look at that monthly, and if there needs to be a change, it doesn't have to wait, quarterly and stuff. That would be discussed at the next board meeting if an item is overexpended, because if you overexpend in multiple line items, then you may run out of money. And so there should be a close eye. That's the board's fiduciary responsibility to review the budget and make sure that it is in line with what is happening and that there's not a lot of overexpending.
Okay, and then when you are approving changes in a budget in a meeting, can you motion to approve the new budget as a whole, or do you need to make motions for each separate line item you are changing?
You would make it for each, your budget's already been approved, so you would make it for each change in a line item. So an example of a motion, and these need to be recorded in the minutes, I move to increase the budget for teacher appreciation by $100. So the total amount of the budget is $3,000. And that should be written out in a motion and then seconded and approved. And the recording secretary would write that down. So it would be for each line item, name the line item, the amount, increase, decrease, resulting budget amount.
I think that's it.
Okay, so let's move on to the next section.
All right, the next section will be developing the budget, and that will be, let me see, where does it say what slide? Slide 6, there it is.
Hi, everybody. We're going to talk about the budget timeline. And I know at first glance it looks cumbersome and confusing, but there is a reason for each step. So I'm going to hopefully explain that. Just for historical purposes, the reason why we have this process is to accommodate summer payments. And what I mean is that sometimes units need to pay things in July and August. And in the past, they could not do that because the budget was not approved in the new year by the association. So this is a process where payments can be made in July and August prior to the next year's association meeting. So the first bullet point is board elects budget committee and develops the proposed budget. I would say after your elections, you should have a board elect meeting, and the first order of business would be to make your appointments. Those standing chairs or whoever that are not elected but appointed by the president and the board should take place, so you'll have more people on your board. And then those appointees can serve on the budget committee. Then the second point of business would be to select the budget committee. The president selects the members of the budget committee, and the treasurer-elect chairs that committee. They come up with a budget, and then they will present it to the board-elect. And so the board-elect would take a look, and we need to consider, and the budget committee needs to consider the carryover balance also, not just the budget line items, but your carryover cash to make sure that you have enough money to start the new year. It's like startup cash, okay? So then the board elect may approve the budget or revise it. And then it says to propose the budget to the current board for approval. And the reason why we do that is because the board-elect is not in charge yet. So their term of office starts July 1st. So the current board still has the fiduciary responsibility for safeguarding PTA assets, which is cash. So as far as presenting it, it could be anyone that can preferably answer questions about the budget. So ordinarily, probably the president-elect and treasurer-elect would make that presentation to the current board. And the reason why we involve the current board also is because they know what's going on, and maybe the board-elect may not be aware of everything that is happening. So the current board may have some plans that that have not materialized yet. So it's just that coordination and communication between the board-elect and the current board to approve the proposed budget. Then the proposed budget that has been approved by the board-elect and the current board is presented to the association at the last meeting of the association for that year. If the budget is approved by the association, then they will release funds for summer payments. So the board-elect should have available list of summer payments that they wish to be released. For example, Spiritware, $10,000. Teacher welcome back lunch, $600. So it would be anything that they feel needs to be paid prior to the first association meeting of the new year. When we move into the new year, you'll notice that the proposed budget becomes a revised budget. And this is where the now current board may make some changes or, look it over. They have their meetings in July and August, but now it's the revised budget that goes to the board, the current board, which used to be the board-elect, but this is the new year, okay? And then the revised budget is presented for approval at the first association meeting of the year. And so this would ordinarily be a board recommendation from the board. They may say the board approves this budget and then present it to the association. If there's any changes, those need to be made. And then the association will release the funds that payments need to be made before the next association meeting. And releasing funds, we're going to talk about that later, but just because the budget approved doesn't mean the money's in the bank. The money needs to be in the bank, and that's why we release funds. So because a program is approved doesn't mean people can run out and start buying things. It has to be released, okay? And so that is the process, the budget timeline.
All righty, let's go to the questions in the chat.
Okay, April's asking what happens if we go over budget on an item without getting prior approval from the association. For example, if we have a dance go over $100 because the dance is before the next association meeting.
Okay, that happens. And if it's not, a lot of money, that can be over budget until the next association meeting or board meeting. It should also, if something comes up between association meetings that was not anticipated, the board may budget and expend funds between association meetings, and it's based on your bylaws. And the deciding factor of how much is how many association meetings you have per year. So in your bylaws, if you have a meeting every month, that amount is $500 that the board may budget and expend between association meetings. If you have, let's say, 5 or 6 meetings a year, then that amount is $750. And if you have, I believe it's 3 or less meetings a year, then it would be $1,000. So units must have monthly board meetings, but not necessarily monthly association meetings. So there is that bit of flexibility between association meetings. But if you do go over budget, a bit, then that can be reallocated and fixed at the next board and association meeting.
Okay, the next question is, does the president-elect serve on the budget committee?
Yes, they can serve on it. They can be a committee member, but the treasurer is the chairperson.
Okay, supplies for PTA, an example, marketing, paper, envelopes, membership cards would fall under the summer budget too, correct? Question mark?
Yes, anything that you anticipate as the association anticipate to be paid prior to your first association meeting. Because at your first association meeting, and you'll know when that is, it's probably in September, they approve the budget then. So this is an exercise where whatever you need to pay for, your membership drive may need those supplies in July and August. So whatever you anticipate that needs to be bought or paid for prior to your first association meeting, you would include in those list of summer payments and release those funds in the association. But you have to make sure that the money is in the bank because money's not coming in maybe during the summer times. So you want to check your cash flow and make sure whatever you've released, that there's money to cover that.
Who should serve on the budget committee?
The president selects the budget committee, and usually there would be volunteers. I've seen where people volunteered, and I also seen where the whole board wanted to be a part of it. And so it is up to the president whether you have a few. It's usually easier when you have a fewer number as far as the budget committee because there's a lot of talk back and forth. But it's the choice of the president and really the board. If they all want to be there, so be it.
Flora, can your budgeting committee consist of your prior treasurer and your prior president, since they're probably the most familiar with the budget?
It can only be board elect members.
Got it.
Okay, how do you vote motion to fix the over budget expense? Is it done in the executive board meeting or general association meeting?
It's preferred that any kind of budget transactions and that's releasing funds and all that start at the board because they can do the analysis and talk about it more. And so they would make that motion to let's say it's over budget. Something, let's say teacher appreciation is over budget by $100. I think that was the example. Then the motion would be, I move to increase the teacher appreciation budget by $100 for a total budget of $3,500. And so then, and that would be recorded in the minutes. And so it would show it went from 3,400 to 3,500 based upon the 100 that was just approved. And this is important for the board to record this because this is for your own protection too, because you may have people running around campus saying, oh, we didn't say we were going to spend that much money on that. And then you would have the minutes to point to, and it's best for the board.
And just to clarify that should also be presented to the association after. Yes. All righty. Thank you. Okay, we're going to launch a poll right now and go ahead and answer these to the best of your ability. And we'll just give you a minute or so because it's just 2 questions. Okay, about 10 more seconds. All righty, going to end the poll now and share the results, and then Flora can go through it. Okay, can you see the results, Flora?
Yes, I do. Yeah, that's great. Most people got it correct. What is the best time to start working on the budget? And it's as soon as possible after the election of the new board. The new board does not have any, power to write checks or do anything like that, but they have the power to plan, and that's what you're expected to do, is to plan. And that's why the budget is the plan, and you want to make sure that that's approved in time, because you have to have your budget meeting, then your board elect meeting, then your current board meeting, then your association meeting. There's quite a few meetings to get through to get the budget passed. And so you want to try and do that as soon as possible after the election, knowing that your term of office is July 1st. So as far as performing your responsibilities, it's July 1st, but planning can start right after the election of the board. Only elected board members may serve on the budget committee. That is false. We had said that your board consists of elected members as well as appointed members. And those appointments, those are usually like the standing chairs, like the communication. Standing chairs are committees that are all year. So your spirit wearer may be a committee, your hospitality may be a committee, and those are appointed as standing chairs. And so they are part of the board as well. So when you're selecting your budget committee, it would be the whole board, which would include elected and appointed positions, as long as you appoint those positions prior to selecting the budget committee.
All righty. Okay, I do see that we have some questions in the chat, but I think we need to move on to the next video segment. We'll try and answer some of these within the chat, and then also if we have time later, we'll catch up on those questions out loud.
The next section is monitoring the budget spending, and that will be slides 7 through 9. Okay, on this slide, as you can see, this is the nice flow chart that we love because it's a graphic illustration of whether we can write the check. But as you can see, the very first box is this expense in the approved budget? So it's very important that the expenses are in the budget. And if it is, then boom, you go over to the right and follow down to see whether you can write the check. You can make sure all the authorizations and signatures are in place. If it's not, then if the expense has been approved by the board, then you might still be able to write the check. Otherwise, no go, you can't write the check. So that's part of why the budget is so important. So on the next slide, we have the spending money. Is it budgeted? Were the funds released by the association? Was it authorized by the board? Are the payment authorizations, requests for reimbursements all filled out and ready to go? Are the receipts and invoices attached? And let's go back and talk about releasing money. If it's already in the budget, you still can't necessarily spend it until you have released it at the association meeting. And you should only release what you are anticipating spending until the next association meeting. So, for instance, if you, the candidates forum, if you might have $500 budgeted, but you're only going to spend $100 until the next association meeting. So you only need to release that amount. Most of these other amounts, like the student planners usually pay that all at once. So you kind of try to think ahead and figure out what expenses are coming up between now and the next association meeting and just release what you need to get through that. Now, sometimes you might be having a fundraiser. I remember we once had a 8th grade fundraiser that we didn't actually have the fundraiser yet, so we didn't know how much money we had. So then we said something like, we release the funds for 8th grade promotion up to the amount earned by the fundraiser. So, I mean, sometimes you have to do some interesting releases like that, but otherwise it's pretty straightforward. And on the next slide, we have a sample budget to actual report. This is an important report that should be run at least every quarter so that your board and association can see what's going on with budget versus actual. I like to run it monthly because it's usually it is a canned report from PTEZ and many other accounting programs. Probably it's a standard report. So it's pretty easy to run every month and just make sure that you're still within budget and make sure that like your membership dues income and what you've forwarded on to the next level is the same amount. And if it's not, then you owe a check to somebody. So that's a way to tell how much you owe. It's also at the end of the year, a great report because it's actually an option for the annual financial report. And it can also be, it's very helpful to be used to help prepare your taxes, especially the CTTR-1. And it's great to help for during the audits too, to get a snapshot of various things. And it's also good for the IRS guidelines for 501c3s. Like to see a report that shows where the entity has spent the money and that they can operate within their budgets and spend their money according to their taxes on purpose. So this is a great report for that. And budgets can be amended with the approval of the association. It has to be a 2/3 vote. And it's if you see that you've budgeted $500 for something and it's already September and you've spent $400, but you know you need to spend at least $200 or $300 more, it's not a problem. You can update the budget, go through everything, make sure you're still within line and increase or decrease where you need to, and present it to the association. And as long as they approve it with 2/3 vote, you're good to go. And there's also, you can refer to the toolkit at capta.org, finance budgeting, amending the budget for more information.
Okay. Rita, can we jump to the last question from Jennifer? Oh, well, it's in two texts, but the motion to release funds?
Sure. Is the motion to release funds the same as ratification of the checks, or do we vote to release funds before we are allowed to write the checks?
Well, remember we said we release funds when we say, okay, the money is in the bank. And so we always must release funds first in order for a check to be written. Otherwise, we may have checks, bouncing around. And so releasing fund is important. It is a motion. It is usually done at the board meeting first, but it can be done at the association meeting also. That's not to say it can't. And that's when we say the money is the bank, we can write the check. Okay, so we always write the check after the release of funds. The authorization, so let's say the funds are released, it's a motion, it's been passed, then the authorization to make the expense can be done at the board or at the association. So you have more opportunities to approve checks, to authorize checks, either at the board meeting or at the association meeting. At the board meeting, it would be a motion to say, I authorize payment in the amount of $50 to Flora Farzad for a conference fee. And then that would be approved. And then that would be ratified at the association meeting. Or you can do the presentation of bills at the association meeting and say, we have a bill for $50 to Flora Farzad for a fee, and that needs to be approved. And that's a motion also. They're all motions.
So just to get to the very basic point is releasing funds is something you need to do before writing any checks. And then ratification would be after writing those checks. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Karina's asking, can we go over the payment of authorization sheet?
Actually, that would be part of the basic finance training that we're doing on April 29th. But if you want to stick around till after, we can see if we can answer any questions at that point.
And I think this may have been answered. Is it okay to release funds only at the association meeting and not at the executive board meeting?
Yes. We don't want to delay releasing funds for the next board meeting once a month. So we do have that opportunity to do that. If you have association meetings, then it's twice a month.
Okay, what should be included in program revenues? My unit always categorizes spiritware as fundraising revenue instead of program revenue.
Program revenue, as described in the IRS 501c3 guidelines, is something that happens all year. It's something that's inventory. If you keep an inventory of spiritware, it is your business all year, then it's a program. The IRS categorizes fundraising as one-time special events. In fact, they use that terminology, special event income or fundraising income. They use that interchangeably. So a program is all year. In Spiritware's case, it's inventory. So a Spiritware t-shirt would be a program. A carnival t-shirt would be a fundraiser because the carnival is a special event once a year.
Okay, you know, I'm going to jump in and launch the second poll, but then you can keep answering the questions in the chat. So we'll be kind of multitasking here.
One last question, just to clarify, releasing funds means the budget has been approved in the meeting. Is that correct?
Exactly. The budget approved, the release the funds, the authorization to expend or to write the check.
So just to make sure we're answering your question, releasing funds is a separate step from approving the budget. Okay. So can you guys see the poll?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead and answer that. If we have specific questions regarding our school's budget that no current board member can help us with, who is the best person to contact?
Oh, you can contact your council treasurer or any experts at your council. If they're unable to answer it, then they would, you need to go through channels, then they would ask the district if it's something that they couldn't handle or answer.
And then one last question, Blanca's asking, on the miscellaneous line, can you explain more about a miscellaneous line?
I cannot explain a miscellaneous line because probably shouldn't have one. The most important thing in, the PTA when it comes to budget, expending and all that stuff is transparency. So you want to stay away from vague budget line items like gifts to school, and that's all you have. And it's, a lot of things. Things as much as possible should be detailed exactly what they are.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll and share the results.
Okay. The first question, once the budget is approved by the association, a chairperson may make purchases for their approved program. False. We had said that even though the budget plan was approved, one cannot go out and spend a penny without funds being released by the board and association saying, yes, the money is in the bank ready to go. Funds may be released for less than the budget amount for the approved program. True. You may have a carnival of $30,000 in May, but you may need to release $1,000 in September as a deposit for a bounce house. So you only release money that you need until your next association meeting. What is required to amend the budget? And that would be approval of 2/3 of members of the association meeting. There is nowhere, anywhere, where there's an approval by one person. Everything is approved and recommended, ratified, or whatever, by a group of people in the board or the association. So principal and treasurer, they're one vote each. The original adopted budget, the subsequent revised budgets, and the budget versus actual reports must be maintained and attached to the meeting minutes because they are true, provides historical data. You see what happens the last few years, and then you're able to prepare your current year budget based upon the historical data. It does protect the board members and demonstrate the fiduciary responsibility. We were talking about the board assessing, always changing the budget, the plan to go along with what's happening. And that is to protect the board also when all of those budgets are attached to the meeting minutes, showing that things were approved and that they are in alignment with the wishes of the association. Maybe used to protect the tax exempt status of the unit. Yes, the budget to actual report may be used as the annual financial report, which is required by the IRS. We do not submit it to the IRS, but we keep it on file at the council and the district. And it shows that we are spending our money in accordance with our tax exempt purpose, and the unit is able to stay within its means. The only thing it does not do is does not need to be submitted to the Department of Justice with the RF1. So the tax return is submitted with the RF1 or the CTTR1. I think that's
okay. Thank you, Laura. Rita, go ahead and read that one question from Jessica because she had to bump it back up.
Okay. When new units have no cash in the bank yet, do we wait until after our first fundraiser to start making spending decisions?
That's a good question. Actually, that's a good question. A startup of a new unit. And because, I mean, I'm just saying this personally, I have no evidence or background to say this, but I would suggest maybe getting some startup funds, maybe from the council. You may address that with the council saying, oh, we need, we need memberships. We don't have money to buy membership envelopes. Or you may have people at the new unit who's willing to front the money to buy those envelopes and then be reimbursed later. That's another possibility. But Lisa, I don't know of any other.
No, that sounds like a reasonable
Yeah.
response.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Let's move on to the next segment, please, Mary.
Sure. The next segment is other things to look out for, and that will be slide number 10.
Okay, so just to wrap it up, we have just several miscellaneous points that we wanted to emphasize before we leave. First of all, you've got to make sure that when you're developing your budget, that fundraising is not the goal. First, you want to plan out your board's goals, what you want to do for the kids at your school, your community. And then once you figure out exactly what your goals are, then you go ahead and figure out what kind of fundraising you need to do in order to be able to accomplish those goals. And so there's a rule of thumb called the 3-to-1 rule that says, and I'm quoting from the toolkit here, there should be at least 3 non-fundraising programs aimed at helping parents or children or advocating for school improvements for every one fundraiser. So that may seem like kind of an unfair ratio, but just keep in mind that there are low-cost programs that you can do that rely more on volunteer power than on actual money. So we did have a few examples of those in our sample budget. like the Reflections program, which is just sort of an arts participation program. And so, you know, you would probably need to buy certificates and ribbons, but that's actually a fairly low cost for something that is available to all of your students. So if you think about programs like that, that can actually be beneficial to the school, but don't cost a lot, that's great. So for the second bullet point, you should not use PTA funds for personal gifts. And the toolkit, the link there sort of explains in detail, but I'm just going to read a small excerpt that personal gifts include gift cards and gifts for baby showers, Secretary's Day, bereavements, weddings, or birthdays. Even though you may think, oh, well, our former PTA president, she did so much for PTA and it's her birthday, so we should recognize that. Yes, you can recognize that, but just not with PTA funds. So if it's something that's important to you as a board or to your membership in general, then that's a thing where you kind of pass the hat and collect personal donations in order to carry that, you know, pay for that gift. Okay. Third bullet point, do not overspend on hospitality or teacher, staff, volunteer appreciation. And I'm going to focus on the example of teacher appreciation because I think that's something where it's kind of easy for PTAs to get a little carried away. But the total amount of your hospitality for the year, that includes any hospitality at meetings, teacher appreciation, staff appreciation, volunteer appreciation, any special events, should, according to the IRS, be, quote, not of a significant amount. So that's a little bit vague. Sort of rule of thumb that we've been using has been that your total amount of hospitality should not exceed 5% of your annual budget. So there's a lot of detail at the links attached. So just kind of keep that in mind that, yes, sure, you want to recognize your teachers, but you've got to make sure that you don't go overboard. Okay. Now, for the same thing, do not overspend on legislative activities. I'm going to take a moment to give a shout out to advocacy work because that's something that PTA was actually founded on, was advocating for hot lunches, for universal kindergarten, for a juvenile justice system. So that's something that's very important, and it actually tends to be overlooked. But again, also for IRS reasons, you don't want to overspend on that. So they have some examples of advocacy that are low cost in the toolkit, but just specifically regarding the guidelines for spending, to retain its IRS tax exempt status and continue to receive tax deductible deductions, a PTA may not participate in any type of political campaign or other activity on behalf of or in opposition to a candidate for any office. And then, nor may a PTA devote more than an insubstantial part of its volunteer activity and expenditures to influence the outcome of ballot measures and other legislation. So being for or against a specific candidate for office is a total no-no. PTA can advocate for stuff that's beneficial to youth and children. And on the PTA website, there's a list of platforms that kind of give guidelines as far as what PTA is in support of. So you can refer to that. But again, you just want to make sure you limit that. Then next bullet point, be careful about making gifts to the school. You want to make sure that if PTA agrees to fund, say, an equipment purchase, it's best to actually donate the money to the school or the school district so that they can make the actual purchase. They can be in the future responsible for any liability or any maintenance that's involved with that piece of equipment. Also, when you're making a gift to the school or the school district, you will want to complete a fiduciary agreement form, which is available on the website, that sort of stipulates that this money that we're donating needs to be used for this exact purpose. And if it's not, then the money will come back to PTA. So that's all presented in greater detail at that link, but just want to make you aware of that. And then the last but not least point, following PTA budget and financial procedures helps protect your PTA. Now, for those of you who are incoming treasurers, a lot of times treasurers are seen as the gatekeepers to the funds, and maybe you'll end up getting buttonholed by someone saying, oh, hey, can PTA pay for this great project I have in mind? This whole procedure with the budget and getting your board's agreement and your association's agreement on what PTA funds should be spent on, that ensures that no one person has to be responsible for any decisions. So if you're in a situation where say your school's principal comes to you and says, oh, hey, can PTA pay for this project? And all you have to do is kind of go back to your whole financial procedure, starting with the budget. Oh, was this something we budgeted for? Yes or no? If it's not, then that needs, and that request would need to go through that whole budget approval process. So even though you as a treasurer would be one that controls the checkbook, you don't really control the funds. It all needs to go through the board, and that's to protect you and all the officers on the board from being responsible for rash decisions. And just gonna reemphasize that point, that every PTA board member has a responsibility to protect the assets of the organization. And these assets include cash, assets, volunteers, and the PTA's reputation. So just kind of keep that in mind. And that's why we have all these sort of seemingly complicated rules and procedures, is just so that you as a volunteer, as an officer, you're protected from any unpleasant consequences. Okay, I see Jennifer has had her hand up so patiently, so go ahead, Jennifer.
Hello, I have a question for you, and I'm going to touch back on the 3-to-1 rule. When it comes to the 3-to-1 rule, you mentioned that it's for all the children or the parents that benefit the community. Now, if my unit does an after-school program, like they do like a paint night, but not all children attend that, is that considered a give back?
As long as it's offered to all the students, then it's not on the PTA that students don't come. Is that what you mean?
So I guess the thing is, you know, some because giving a give back, I would want that all the children have the ability to participate. But after school, some parents, you know, they're busy, or they don't get out of work on time, or some kids have their sports or their commitments. Would that be considered, would that still be considered a give back, or should we reflect and redo and reconsider another form of giving back?
Well, I think as long as it's offered, and that's the best you can do as far as timing, because if you're trying to find a time that everybody can come, that's probably not going to work out for you. So I would say, as long as it goes out to every parent saying this is being offered, then it's up to them to participate.
Right. Okay. All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Lisa, do you want me to read that next one
Um,
from Sunny?
actually, I'm gonna scooch back. I think Jennifer also had a question before where she says,
Okay.
does this mean checks authorized during board meetings will supersede the association?
No, it
Yes.
means that if you authorize the check at the board meeting, then the check can be made out, written right then. And that's the important part, that you can give the check to that night without the association approval until the next association, because the board authorized it. And so the check can be made out right at that time at the board meeting.
And after that approval from the board, would they still need approval from the association after it's been written, or with the board approval, does that suffice?
No, the board approval, then you would cut the check. Then on your treasurer report that you present to the association, those checks will be listed as checks on your treasury report. That's where you say, I move to ratify checks numbers, and then list those checks, and then the association would ratify them.
Right. And is there, so long as that meets the criteria that's in the budget, correct?
Yes, as long as that, and that should be before on the check request, you'll see, is this activity been approved? Check that off, make sure that's true, and that's the treasurer's responsibility. Has the money been released? Check that box, so that's a treasurer's responsibility to make sure those items are done.
Thank you. I appreciate you all.
Thank you.
So Rita, go ahead and read Sunny's short question, then we'll hop over to Karina.
For hospitality, is it 5% of total budgeted income or total budgeted expenses?
Budgeted expenses.
I was right.
Oh, okay.
I answered. Okay, go ahead,
Okay.
Karina.
Sorry, I have three questions that came up through these slides. One of them, they mentioned to be careful about purchasing equipment for the campus. We had already voted on purchasing equipment with the fundraiser with the funds that we received from a fundraiser, but they're not large equipments. It's something, they're portable equipments that we wanted to give back to the elementary kids. We haven't purchased it yet, but is that something we would have to get approved, or like you said, fill out the fiduciary form and etc.? Or is that something that, because we did vote on it through the board and the committee to make the purchase, and again, they're portable, so they're not like large equipment where a child can get hurt.
If you approve the purchase of equipment, and I'm not sure what equipment you're talking about, but you would gift it to the school. You could gift it to the school on a fiduciary agreement after you've purchased it, if you didn't go through the procurement process at the school district. Because usually if you're talking about equipment, you would ordinarily give the money to the school district, because they have purchasing departments that go to procurement, because these tend to be large ticket items, and PTAs really don't have a purchasing department. But if these are small things, like you say, and if it has a useful life of several years, you would say, then you can prepare a fiduciary agreement to gift these items to the school district.
Oh, okay.
Because it usually involves not only liability, but maintenance, upkeep, and repair of any kind of equipment that the district would be responsible for, because the PTA can't be responsible for that.
Yeah, we were gonna gift sport equipments like basketballs, footballs, and those don't last.
Oh, so yeah, that's not really equipment. I mean, that's not really equipment, I guess, that we're talking about. Because yeah, we're talking about like computers or something like that.
Oh, okay. Because we were also going to donate those portable basketball courts that they can extend to their height. I mean, it wasn't, again, it's not expensive, so that's why we were able to vote on that. So it's something that the campus aide would have to take into a room and take back out as they use it.
I see.
I'm
Yeah,
gonna
and
jump in and say something like that. Maybe that's something, if that falls down on somebody or whether you don't want that liability to be on PTA. It's
Mhm.
just sort of what's coming off the top of my head. So maybe
So,
that's
Yeah.
something
so
that might
still
be
fill out
worth.
the fiduciary form then?
yeah,
that too?
just to be on the safe side, I would say use a fiduciary agreement and under equipment. And because it does have a useful life and it could fall on somebody. So you want to make sure that PTA is not responsible for that.
So should we have that form filled out before we make the purchase?
That
Actually,
might be, well, I think after the purchase, because then you have it and stuff, because something may happen that you don't make the purchase.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I would think after.
are we talking
Oh,
about the
okay.
fiduciary form? Or, because it was my understanding that for a fiduciary form, you fill that out when you make a donation of, you give the money to the school or the school district for them to make the purchase.
Yeah, but there's a part of it that you can specify, I believe, equipment and things that you're gifting to the school and lasts for the
Right, that's true.
useful life and all that stuff.
Okay.
And for how long they should have it, it's kind of weird, but there's a
Okay.
section, yeah.
A second question. I was under the understanding that if once we created our budget and it was approved by the board and the members, that let's say we approved I don't know, for field trips, let's say we approved $2,000 and we have the money and now the field trip requests for bus rental or ticket purchases come in. We don't have to get that approved through the board since the budget is already there. That's just my understanding. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, if your $2,000 is budgeted and it's been released, then you may expend it. Like, you mean if the school district sends you invoices to pay?
Let's say we approved and released $2,000 for field trips. So then one teacher comes to me and says, do you think you can help us rent a bus? It'll be $300. Okay, so then we write the check. And then another teacher comes and says, can we have this for our students? It's only going to be $100 cost. Okay, so when we write the check, so all of that will fall under field trips.
Yes, but you'd rent the school buses through the district, the buses, and they would invoice you.
Oh, okay, because sometimes if there's a school, there's been times where school buses are not available. And so then a charter bus needs to be rented.
Okay, yeah,
You know
I
what?
guess that's different, yeah.
Actually, Karina, do you want to stay after for your last question? Because there's some other more general stuff in the chat that I want to address. So Courtney asks about the 2/3 association approval. That is 2/3 of whoever is attending your meeting, not 2/3 of your entire membership. So to, to put your heart at ease. So just as long as you've met your quorum that's required, then 2/3 of whoever's attending, that's fine. And then I got to go to Sunny's long thing that's sort of a summary of the entire process. And I'm not going to read it all out loud. For the most part, it seems accurate. Let's see. Just toward the end, I just want to make sure that you're getting approval. So, okay, so the committee presents their plan to the executive board, that's fine, okay? And then people go ahead and are given authorization to, you know, the authority to make the expenses based on that plan, that's good. Yeah, that's fine, just as long as, you know, you get the approvals along the way. This seems like a very good recap. So I don't know how long it took you to type that. Okay, you know what, Mary, can we just go ahead and let's wrap this up, and then anyone who wants to stay afterwards for questions, they can.
Sure. Thank you for joining us today, and we hope that today's workshop has been helpful. For more information about PTA finances, you can visit our website, which is 33rdpta.org, and California State PTA website, which is capta.org, CAPTA, as it's sometimes called, as well as consulting your council's financial team. If you have any additional questions or ideas for topics that you would like us to provide training on, the training, contact email ptatraining@33rdpta.org. In addition, our contact information is on slide 2 of the PowerPoint that was sent out for any additional questions or issues.
Okay, thank you for coming.